Hi, hello, it's Nikki, and welcome to my messy bookshelf. Today, I thought it was finally time to close out my 2025 reading year. We are already halfway through the month of January into 2026, and I have not closed out my reading for the year of 2025. So today, I thought it would be fun, at least for me, to go through some of my reading stats and then to share some of my favorite books from the year of 2025 that I read. So it was a very interesting year. I set some goals last year, as I do every year. Most of the stats that I have here are coming directly from Goodreads because I log just about everything that I read on Goodreads. And sometimes I forget to log the books. So I might be missing one or two books, and I feel like I am, but the ones that I think that I am missing are rereads. So, but yeah, let me get into my stats. So for the year of 2025, I had set a goal, and this is not something that I find super important. I just like to aim for a certain number. I set a goal of reading 60 books because that seemed fairly doable to me. In the past, I have read well over that amount of books. However, the actual number of books that I read, according to Goodreads, was 54 books. And I would love to say that I can confirm exactly how many books I read. I know that I'm missing one or two, but whatever. I kind of quit using my reading journal towards the end of the year during the summer. So it was at least 54 books. I didn't meet my goal of reading 60 books, but I am okay with that because the books that I did read, I had an amazing reading year. I will have to say, I had an amazing reading year. I had more 5-star books last year than I think that I've had in a very long time, especially in one year. So 54 books is what Goodreads said that I read. A total of 19,562 pages. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I took my time. I read, like I said, some amazing books, and even the ones that were not my favorite were not bad. So I think I did have one or two DNFs. I only wrote down one of them. So yeah. So I also had other goals as far as classics and nonfiction as well. So I had a goal of reading 12 classics, so about one a month. What I ended up reading was 12 novels. So I did meet my goal, and I think I actually kind of a little bit exceeded that goal because I did read a couple of classic short stories as well that I did not include in the actual number of classics that I read. So I did read 12 classic novels. Sometimes I also find it difficult to define what a classic novel is because there are some books that I read this year that some people might consider classics, but for me, for Agatha Christie's, some people consider those classics because they were written like more than 50 years ago. I do not. But yeah, I read 12 classic novels. For nonfiction, my goal was to read 12 nonfiction novels. I read 6 nonfiction novels, but I am okay with that because 6 is more than none. So I am perfectly fine with that. And the ones that I did read, for the most part, were excellent. There was one that was maybe a little drier than I would have liked, but for the most part, the nonfiction that I read was pretty good. Of the rereads that I did log into Goodreads, there were 2. So I did reread Jane Eyre and I did reread The Secret Garden. There were some others, like I did read an Agatha Christie and I think The Trumpet of the Swan, a middle grade, but I didn't count those. So 2 rereads that I logged. And that that was really all that I was tracking for stats for the year. There were a lot of other fun stats. I love going back into Goodreads and looking at my stats. I am also using, oh my goodness, what's the other, the other reading app that I use? Oh, it's escaping me right now, but I do use another reading app. And when I go in and log something in Goodreads, I go and log it there as well. So I am using both. And I think I'm preferring the other one, even though I'm having a brain fart right now. So I will put it up on the screen because I forgot. So moving into my favorite books of the year. So I had a very difficult time narrowing my favorite books down, but I do have a little bit of everything here. I think I have some middle grade, I have some classics, I have nonfiction, thriller, sci-fi. Yeah, I have a little bit of everything here. So I am very pleased with the way, like I said, that my reading year turned out, because it's a pretty mixed bag of favorite books that I have here on either side of me. So I will just get into what I read that was my favorite for the year. So I have 10, scratch that, I have 11. So it was going to be 10 with a notable mention, but I just can't. So it's gonna be 11. My 11 favorite books of 2025. So this one was actually the first book that I read in 2025, and that is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. And it just so happened to be like the first book that I read in 2025, and I am kicking myself. And this is gonna be a recurring theme, I think, this year, and for 2026. I am kicking myself for waiting so long to read this book. This book was excellent. I put it off because I love Elizabeth Gaskell. I love her writing. And I had been putting this book off for the longest time because not only is it big, but because I knew that it was an unfinished work. And I am telling you, if you have been putting this book off because it's unfinished, don't do it. You know how it's going to end. You know how it's going to end. So I am so thrilled that I finally got around to this book. Just a slow slice of life look at a family in the English countryside. And this story follows Molly Gibson and her widowed father and her new stepmother and stepsister and their lives. And that is basically it, as they fall in love and go on to get married. So I loved this book. This was a fantastic start to 2025. So I'm so happy I finally got to this book. The next one I have here is one that I probably mentioned a million times this year, and this is another classic, Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. And this one, I can't say enough about this book. This also happens to be the longest book that I read this year, which I didn't write it down, but it was over 1,000 pages. This book is one of my new loves. This book is right up there with the Pickwick Papers for me, in that it is just hilarious. Very few books, especially books written, hundreds of years ago, make me laugh out loud so much. And this book follows Don Quixote and his faithful friend and servant, Sancho Panza, as they go on adventures around the countryside in Spain. This book was written over 400 years ago, and I could care less because it is still fantastic today. And this is going to be one that I definitely reread in the future. I can't think about this book without smiling because it just made me so happy to read this book. It's so ridiculous, but not in a bad way. Excuse me. The next one is rather a short book, but also one that I wish that I had read sooner because I didn't think I was going to like it, and I ended up loving it. And that is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I think everyone knows what The Great Gatsby is about. We have our very rich gentleman in New York, and he is in love with a woman, and she's married to someone else. So Jay Gatsby and his wannabe paramour, loving her from afar. And I just thought this was such a... I can't even find the words to describe this book. This book is so short, and yet it was so fantastic. I don't want to say unrequited love, but I guess that would be what it is. But yeah, just the love that he had for her, and just all the stuff that happens in this book, this short book. I just thought it was fantastic, and I wish that I had read it sooner. The next book that I have here, not a classic, but I think this is going to be a classic in the future. I think future generations are going to read this book and consider it a classic, because this book is fantastic. And this might be up there with my favorite books of all time, and that is Project Hail Mary. I adored this book. I loved this book so much that not only did I read it, I went back and listened to the audio as well. I also convinced my husband to read it, and he loved it. And we could not be more excited that they are making a movie about this book. And this book follows a scientist that is also a middle school teacher who goes on to find himself in space. And I just love the way that it's written. I love what happens. I love the friendship in the book, but I also love the way it's written. I love books where we see someone in the present and then we are piecing together what happened by flashbacks. And that is exactly what happens in this book. I don't want to say too much because I think that that would be a spoiler, but one of my favorite books, I think, of all time now. I can't get enough of that book. The next one that I have here actually happens to be the last book that I read in 2025, and that is World War Z. Who would have thought? So World War Z, we are following oral accounts, interview accounts of the survivors from the zombie war. And I thought it was very clever that Max Brooks, the author, inserted himself into the book as the person doing the interviewing. And it's him as a sort of UN official that is going around collecting interviews from people that survived from all over the world. And I am not a big zombie person. That is not something that would have interested me, but so many people told me that it was so different than the movie, which I did see, and I ended up loving this book very much. Another one that I actually convinced my husband to read, and he loved it as well. So this one, if you are scared of reading this book because you think it's all about zombies and it's going to be bloody and scary and all that stuff, no. This book is about the survivors and how they survived. And I just thought it was so fascinating that a book about zombies is not really about the zombies. They kind of take a back seat to the whole story. So we are piecing together the years of the zombie war by these accounts from these people. And we are just seeing the different people's reactions around the world as they realized that there was something wrong. Then when the Great Panic started to set in, and then how people were so resilient and managed to overcome this issue. And I just loved this book so much. So read it. Read it if you think that you don't like zombie books, because it's not about the zombies. There are zombies in there, but it's kind of like, okay, we have to have them sometimes. This one was going to be my notable mention, but I couldn't not include it in my favorites, because this was another goal of mine for years, to finally read this book. And I couldn't be happier that I finally got around to reading this one. And it just stuck with me so much. And that is Moby Dick. We all know what Moby Dick is about Captain Ahab's quest to find the elusive white whale. And I actually made a little series of myself reading this book because I couldn't believe how after so many failed attempts at reading this book, it just clicked this time. I found it entertaining, I found it moving, I found it all kinds of things. And yeah, it definitely takes a bit of time to get through it. This is not one you're gonna breeze through, but it was so fantastic as well. And I just loved all of the references in here. I also love books that are set on the high seas. I do love that. So, yeah. I'm so glad that I finally got to this book. Alrighty, moving on to, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books left. The next one is one that I actually did a buddy read on, my first buddy read with my friend Jess over on a stack of books, and that is Pachinko. Fantastic. It had been on my shelf for a while. I don't know why. Again, why I always put books off when I hear so much about them. So I put it off for the longest time, and then doing this buddy read, I fell in love with this book. And this book takes place in war-torn Korea/Japan. We see our main character is a young girl, a young woman in Korea at the time that this book opens, and World War II kicks off. She ends up relocating to Japan, and we see how the Koreans are treated in Japan, especially during the war, and kind of the effects of the war on Japan and afterwards. So I thought this was a fantastic family saga, and I just loved it. I thought it was beautiful. Definitely a 5-star read for me. And then moving on, we have one that takes place in Japan. Shogun. Another one I tried reading years ago, and I kind of was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be into this, but I gave it another shot, and then I couldn't put it down. Fantastic. And this book takes place, I want to say in the 1500s or the 1600s. I think it was the 1500s. And we have our main character, who is the captain of a ship that is trying to find another passage to the Spice Islands, I think. So kind of like Columbus. And they end up washing up, shipwrecked in Japan. And we see the whole saga of what happens to this man as he sort of starts to assimilate into Japanese culture. And I thought it was fantastic. So, by the way, he is an English sailor traveling with, were they Swedish? He was traveling with, I think they were Swedish sailors, but the captain, he is American. English. English. He is English. And he is traveling with them, and they end up in Japan. And we see, as he's starting to learn more about Japanese culture, how it turns from hatred to, I actually kind of love this culture. And it's just so fascinating. It's an epic saga. There's so much political intrigue in this book. There's so much going on. It's epic. It is epic. There's fighting, there's adventure on the high seas, all the things that I love. Loved it. So, Shogun. I read part 1 and part 2. I consider both of them as one book. So, Shogun was my favorite, or one of my favorites this year. Moving on to a book that I recently read towards the end of the year, and that is Strange Pictures by Uketsu. And I did mention this in another video. This book was so creepy. It was so creepy, but so good. Not like super horrific horror type book, but it was definitely creepy. It definitely gave me the creeps. And I didn't know what was going on. We're following multiple different characters, and we have no idea how their storylines are going to intersect. And there's these weird pictures that are throughout the book, and we don't know how those pictures are related to one another. And when you finally see, you're like, oh, okay, that is creepy. And gosh, it was so fantastic. And I cannot wait for this person's new book to come out. No one knows anything about this author, by the way. Yeah, they wear a mask whenever they are making appearances anywhere. So a new book apparently is coming out in March, I think. So I am looking forward to that. But super creepy. One of the most twisty books that I think that I've ever read. I loved it. And then next we have a middle grade book. And this is one that I recently read as well. And this is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And this book follows a young orphaned boy who, because of reasons, he is raised in a graveyard by a community of unlikely characters. And I will not spoil who they are or why he has to be raised in this graveyard, but this is everything that I love in a middle grade book. It was adventurous, it was heartwarming, it was kind of sort of magical, and I just loved it. I loved it so very much. And because I loved it, I ended up reading Coraline afterwards and didn't like it nearly as much as I loved this book. This book was perfection to me. So everything that I love in middle grade, and if you're looking for a middle grade, The Graveyard Book was fantastic. And finally, we are here to my last book, and the only nonfiction that I have here. I did have another nonfiction that I considered, but I chose this one because it has stuck with me, and that is Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson. This one has really stuck with me. Having read a lot about this topic, it really stuck with me. So this woman, she interviewed a lot of government officials, scientists, people in the field of nuclear warfare, and got a really compelling scenario together that she put in this book. So it is basically what would happen in the event of a nuclear strike. And I found it fascinating. I found it gripping. And I could not put it down when I picked it up. So it has really stuck with me. Yeah. Very fast-paced and page-turning. So if you're looking for a nonfiction to read that is also gonna maybe scare you a little bit, then I highly recommend this one. And then for notable mention, I cannot find it on my shelf, so I think someone has snagged it. But I also read Because of Winn-Dixie, another middle grade, and that was because my lovely daughter was raving to me about that book for the better part of a year and kept asking me to read it. And I finally did, and I loved it. And that one follows a little girl who finds a dog in a grocery store called Winn-Dixie. And yeah, it's a slice of life, coming of age story with a dog. Like, what more can you want in a middle grade, right? So that is my notable mention. And yeah, I had a fantastic reading year. I loved mostly everything that I read, and I have no complaints for the year of 2025. I can only hope that 2026 goes half as well as this did. But I thank you if you stuck around this long, and I would love to hear if you've read any of these or plan to. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.